with me now is our political panel. Peter McGauran, former minister in the Howard government, now a senior advisor at Bondi Partners. And Simon Banks, former Labor advisor, now managing director at Hawker Britain. Simon, it's important for a federal government, for governments of any persuasion, in the face of a natural disaster like we're seeing unfold with those floods in the wake of the cyclone Jasper in far north Queensland, that they move and move quickly.
Oh, agreed. And I think that interview you did with Murray Watt shows that the federal government has been planning as best it could for what are always difficult to predict events, that the government's moving very quickly, both in terms of the financial assistance, obviously, that it's providing to those far north Queenslanders who are affected, but also in terms of helping the Queensland government get its SES personnel onto the ground in Cairns, which has not been easy because of the closure of the airport up there, but also obviously getting those ADF assets into place as well so that they can provide additional assistance around it. I think that's what Australians expect. I think they expect governments just to get down, roll up their sleeves and get on with it. And I think, Murray showed you pretty clearly there that the current government's doing exactly that.
Things remain unpredictable, Peter, given the difficulty in the forecasting of such a massive weather event and this huge rainfall that we've seen. But the government obviously wanting to ensure that the ADF and everything possible is being thrown at this.
Yes, and Murray Watts again proved that he's amongst the top and most competent ministers in the government. He's well across everything. And you asked him, Kieran, when would he be visiting, and he's scheduled for this week. But I have to ask, particularly in light of today's warning and disappointing polls for the government, is the Prime Minister going to visit? It was the craziest thing I've seen in a long while that he put up a selfie on social media of him at a winery in Western Australia when he didn't have to, and just invited criticism. He's got to be seen as reconnecting with the electorate at large. He has to go up.
Yeah, you'd think he would be at some point, Simon.
Oh, I've got no doubt the Prime Minister will be there as soon as he reasonably can. I mean, as Murray Watt was telling you, Kieran, there are actually fundamental logistical issues with being able to even get, the ADF and SES personnel, those boots on the ground, which I'm sure everyone will agree is priority one. But I've got no doubt the Prime Minister will be up there as soon as he reasonably can, and that it's safe for him to do so, and it can obviously be of some assistance to the community. I think the people of far north Queensland have seen through Murray Watt's actions in particular, directed by the Prime Minister and by the Deputy Prime Minister, who's also the Minister for Defence, that the government is working seamlessly with the Queensland Government on this, and they'll be on the ground pretty damn quick, I think you can safely say.
Yeah, indeed. Murray Watt saying that there, Peter, you heard him in that interview saying that the Prime Minister has made it clear to him that they will be standing side by side with far north Queenslanders through a difficult patch here.
In which case he'll be held to account, because, Kieran, in emergencies like this, whether it's a tornado or massive bushfire or flooding, there are no proper compensation, support and restoration funding available. It always is made up depending on the extent of the disaster, and always in conjunction with the state government. It's not as if there is in the top drawer all these schemes that can restore people to their previous position or their housing, their business, the council's infrastructure and so on. So there's a long way to go on this, as there always is after a massive disaster of these dimensions.
Peter, what's your read as we turn our attention to the politics to finish 2023? What's your read of the opinion polls? Some have the government slightly up on recent surveys. One today has them slightly down. But it's all about that 51, 49, 52, 48 sort of level. Is that your read?
Yes, you've got to untangle them, obviously, Kieran. But what we can say with certainty is that the honeymoon period, which lasted until basically the middle of this year, where the government actually went well ahead of the Liberal opposition, is over, and that both parties are returning to their core vote. The Freshwater Strategy poll today in the Financial Review suggests that the Liberals would win the next election. They would win 6 seats, Labor would lose 5. Now, whereas News poll says that they're basically the same position as the last election. But two things come out of that. One, how do the Liberals win government without getting back some of the teal seats? Even on the freshwater strategy poll, how do they form a government or a majority government without winning back some teal seats, even if they manage to beat Labor easily? The second thing is the Prime Minister consistently now, and on today's two polls, personal rating is in negative territory. There are more people disapprove of him than approve of him, and his lead over Peter Dutton as preferred Prime Minister has narrowed to 10-11%, which in the context of these contests is remarkably narrow. So the government has serious problems. Albanese has to turn this around, or these will become entrenched voting intentions.
Interesting numbers in the Redbridge poll this week, Simon, around vocational or TAFE educated people, tradies and so on. There's been a drop for the government on that front too.
Look, I don't think it's very hard, Kieran. I mean, cost of living is the number one political issue. And if you look at those parts of the community that are most at risk, that are most stressed at the moment because of the cost of living crisis that's going on out there, it is people essentially on lower incomes in blue-collar jobs, or people who are on various forms of welfare and the like, who are doing it the toughest at the moment. So unsurprisingly, that group of Australians are taking the harshest view of the government. And I think that's what you're seeing in that Redbridge poll. But on the other hand, there's another half of Australia which is actually doing okay, is actually building up its financial buffers, is investing. We've seen record employment, 700,000 jobs created in Australia since this government got elected, a record number of jobs for an incoming new government. So it's a very mixed story as you go around the country. Yes, there are many Australians under severe financial pressure, and of course, you can only expect them to show some displeasure at the government because of it. But there's another half of Australia out there that's actually doing okay. And the fact that most Australians, more Australians than ever before, have a job is one of the reasons why the government's polling numbers are actually in the position they are in today.
Peter, with government's midterm, I know governments that you were a part of, the Howard government over a number of cycles, there'd be dips midterm. So is this normal, what we're seeing?
Yes, to a large extent it is, Kieran, but the long-term trend is beginning to emerge. Look, I don't disagree with what Simon says, but the problem for the government is that those who are suffering cost of living pressures don't see Anthony Albanese as the good bloke on their side fighting for them that they once did. He was incredibly popular, and somehow along the way, and unfortunately the mandatory overseas travel has contributed to this significantly, he has lost the link to people who think that Albanese will always fight for him because he's one of us. So to me, that's a big issue for him to address. Otherwise, they'll regard him as just another white-bread, cut-out politician.
Peter, Simon, gents, great to see you. Talk to you soon.